Okay, so in this video we will be discussing Kings of the Wyld. So quick, the quick 30-second review. This book is really good. I really enjoyed it. It's exciting. It's fun. Stuff's always happening. You won't be bored. Um, it's a fun ride, and you're gonna have a good time. Basically, it's the quick review. Like something like a 7, 8 out of 10. Enjoyable book. Okay, so now let's get into some of the details. So first, let's start with just sort of the plot. So the plot's a bit, it's sort of like a traditional journey thing. Not necessarily a hero's journey, because the idea of a hero's journey, I think, is that you're supposed to change and have an arc and stuff. Our main character doesn't really do that. Specifically, he doesn't really have an arc, but I guess you learn more about him over the course of it, so you, as a reader, have an arc of how you interact with him, I guess. But yeah, so the plot of this book is very much like, it's very much like The Hobbit, actually. In fact, I would actually say this book's really similar to The Hobbit in terms of the way the plot is structured. So you have a main character who doesn't want to go on a quest thing, and then you have something that must be gotten. In this case, it's a person. In The Hobbit, it's an Arkenstone. And then there's a whole bunch of trials and tribulations before. Then there's getting the thing, and then there's a battle. So very similar structure to The Hobbit, actually. But I don't mean to imply in any way that this thing is ripping off The Hobbit at all, because other than the structure, it's totally different. In terms of like the trials that they face, the way it's where they go. It's honestly. So I'll get to that later. I'll just quickly talk about the plot. So the plot is basically the structure where they run into lots of different things that they've got to deal with on their journey to where they're going, and that's kind of good because it kind of lends it sort of a concrete thing, because it like a concreteness to the plot, because you always know where it's going. You know that you've been told the final goal over and over and over again from the start. So you as a reader, you kind of get that sense of progress. We're like, we're getting there, and it's even really well done in the sense that your expectations are built up, because it tells you how the goal's going to be achieved. It's like, we're going to get the band back together, and then we're going to go do this, and then we're going to go do that. And so as a reader, you get that satisfying sense of not only are we going somewhere physically, as in the characters are physically moving, but we're going somewhere in terms of journeying towards our goal. So that's really cool. The characters are really, really good. So the band, if you will, is really well developed. And I honestly think here, if we're going to continue with that Hobbit comparison, I actually think here is where this book actually outshines the Hobbit a little bit. Because the Hobbit, how many are there? 12 dwarves. I could probably name like 7 of them, and in terms of personality, I could probably talk about one of them because he's fat. So what I'm saying is that the way that characters are done in this is much better, because there's only 5 members of a band, and there's a couple more people who are along for the ride at various points. And because of that, you get to know them a lot better in the way. And not only are the characters developed, which is cool, and you get to learn more about their individual quirks and stuff. You don't necessarily get lots of backstory, and you don't learn about lots of stuff about them, but you understand. If, for example, if there was a conversation and there were multiple different characters talking, Brandon Sanderson's talked about this in some of his lectures. If there's a conversation and multiple different characters are talking, you could tell who's talking without speech tags. You know what I mean? Because the characters are developed. So that's really cool, and you really do get an idea of their different personalities and how they mesh together. And more specifically than that, you get an idea of the relationships they have with each other. Because in a group of 5 people, there might be a couple of best friends, maybe 2 groups of best friends, and then like one guy who interacts with him all, or maybe there's like a trio that's together or whatever. And so you really get that realistic depiction of how an actual group of 5 people, band, if you will, actually would interact in real life. So that's really cool. What else? Oh yeah, just the action, the character, like the way the characters fight and stuff is just really interesting. It's really cool. There's lots of cool, interesting monsters. I like how this author he did not seem afraid to just take whatever. He's heard of a monster somewhere, he's just chucking it in. There's like chimeras and gorgons and stuff, which is all ancient Greek, and then you've got like random like plant monsters and all sorts of shit. He does not care. If it's a monster, it's in. It does seem though he took mainly Greek monsters that. Just like most of the monsters were Greek, and then it was also like sort of like elves drew in, so it sort of gave me elf vibes, but not totally elves, not like cut and paste Tolkien. So that's cool. And yeah, just the monster stuff is really cool. And I don't normally talk about prose, because I don't really know that much about prose. And like, if you just tell me what's going on, I'm happy. But I've got to say that the prose in this book is really cool. Just the way he describes stuff, his use of metaphor. You're constantly sort of in it. You feel, particularly when the action, because sort of a book with lots of action. You can. I should do a review of Temple, because Temple is a book where there's lots of action, and you kind of sort of you're not in it. You feel like you're watching it from far. But this book is it's really well done, and I think that's because you get the really interesting perspective of Clay, who's our main character, who the story's told through. and you really get his his take on it, because he's just kind of like along for a ride. He's like, please don't, I've just got a shield. I just, you know, I'm not really too keen on fighting, but I'll do it if I have to. And so you kind of get this idea, because that's probably, you know, that's how you as a reader might imagine yourself. You're like, oh yeah, I would help my friend, but like I wouldn't want to be there. You know, at least for me, that's how I interacted with the story. So so I thought that was really nice to have that perspective and that understanding. It was almost a little bit first law-ish in the way that the characters are so well developed and stuff. Another positive about this book is that it's funny. Like there's some properly funny lines here. I can't actually remember any of them specifically to give you examples, but I was having a giggle a few times during as I listened to this book. So yeah, it's a funny book. The characters are good. It has a well defined plot, if you will. And yeah, it was really well done. And yeah, some of the additional, like the fun, like additional characters for band were also fun. Like there's this ogre with like two heads, and the one's blind and the one's not, and so it's so wholesome because the one who's not blind is like describing the world as way nicer than it is to the blind one. I just thought that was a really cool idea. It was just really interesting, and the idea, because it made it a bit more nuanced. So not all monsters are evil. You know, they run into a troll who's like a witch doctor who's just like helping them out and stuff. And I just had fun with that. That's the thing with this whole book. This whole book is just fun. Like, you know, there's some dark stuff, you know, there's people dying and stuff, but in general, like, I was having a good time. So yeah, that's a really big plus. One negative I would say is that it did feel a little bit jumpy, in the sense that there was the odd jump cut, in the sense, you know, they'd be in one place and then they'd sort of just cut to the next place, and so it felt, I had a little bit of trouble locking down what the characters are talking and doing stuff, and he didn't tie it down super well to a location. So, for example, you know, they might be having a conversation and you're like, oh, this is at the previous location, but then you realize that there's actually been a cut and they're actually in a new place. And it's not necessarily bad or anything, but it did make it a bit hard to sort of, for me to, you know, visualize what's going on, because I wasn't super aware of where they even were at some times. And this is not a big deal, and it didn't happen all the time, but it's just something I noticed. Particularly because there's so many different places they go, because it's this long journey, and sometimes yeah, it would cut away, and you know, maybe, and even to the next day, you know, like you'd have stuff where it's like they've been traveling with her for 2 days, and you're like, have they? Oh shit, I didn't know that, you know, which is fine. Obviously, you know, it's a multiple month journey. They can't just, you know, give me every second of it. But I just feel perhaps the structuring of when those jump cuts happened could have been a bit better. But honestly, that's my only criticism of this book. I really had a fun time. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the structure. I enjoyed it all, and I'm about to listen to the sequel, which I'm like looking forward to, which is always a good sign when you're you know, you can't wait to dig into the sequel. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I really strongly recommend this book. Just give it a try. It's not even that long. I think the audiobook is something like 17 hours or whatever. So yeah, give it a listen, and then you'll probably just have a bit of a fun ride. Thanks very much for watching, and have a great day.